On March 7, 2019, something horrific and mysterious happened in the Nevada desert. A local man driving through the desolate area noticed an abandoned car and immediately called the police. When law enforcement arrived at the scene, they saw that the car's windows and doors were smashed, as if someone had tried to escape from the inside. At first, it seemed that no one was inside, but they were alerted by the smell of decay coming from the trunk. Upon opening it, they discovered the body of a 71-year-old psychiatrist from California, Sobercherd. Tom was a well-known and respected person who had dedicated his entire life to helping others. His patients adored him for his kindness and compassion, and his colleagues respected him for his professionalism. Unfortunately, Tom had no children of his own, although he was married. Perhaps that's why he immersed himself in work with troubled children and teenagers, trying to fill the void in his heart. In addition to psychiatry, Tom had another passion: magic. He was a member of the exclusive magicians club, the Magic Castle, and often entertained his young patients with tricks. He especially enjoyed turning a $1 bill into a $100 bill. This trick invariably caused delight and joy in children. If Tom found out that one of his patients' parents was having financial difficulties, he would give them this magic bill without hesitation. Thanks to his generosity and kindness, Tom became a true light in the lives of many disadvantaged children and their families. How did he end up in the trunk in the middle of the desert, hundreds of miles from home? I'll tell you all the details right now, but only to those wonderful people who subscribe to the channel right now, like this video, and leave any comment below. Among Dr. Sobercherd's patients were many women who found themselves in difficult life circumstances. Single mothers suffering from drug addiction or forced to sell their bodies to feed their children. Tom sincerely cared about their fates and often offered financial assistance, even though it might have seemed unethical from the point of view of his profession. But one day in December 2000, when Tom was 52, his own life turned upside down. Hard, of course, upside down because he was Trump's psychologist. Sorry, a bad joke. His wife found out that he was secretly communicating with young girls on the internet, meeting with them and giving them money. She immediately filed for divorce, suspecting her husband of infidelity and sexual relations with his patients. Tom denied any illegal actions and insisted that he was guided solely by the desire to help women in need. However, his reputation was tarnished, and his motives were incomprehensible to those around him. It seemed that at this point, Dr. Sobercherd's personal life had finally collapsed. But during a vacation in Las Vegas in 2022, he met Judy, a 42-year-old divorced mother of 4. Despite the age difference, they quickly found common ground. Both did not drink alcohol, spent time by the pool, went to concerts, and even promised each other to meet again. Soon, Judy moved in with Tom in the small town of Salinas. They lived together in a cozy country house, and it seemed that the doctor had finally found his happiness. Judy's children became a real family for him, which he had never had. In 2017, Dr. Sobercherd's life took another unexpected turn. Through the internet, he met 24-year-old Kelsey Turner, a young and ambitious girl with a difficult fate. Kelsey was born on May 5, 1993 in Norfolk, Virginia. At the age of 22, she decided to radically change her life and moved to sunny California with the dream of becoming a successful model. On social media, the girl created the image of a bad Barbie, a sexy and daring beauty who is not afraid to break the rules. It seemed that fate itself smiled upon Kelsey. She began posing for such famous men's magazines as Playboy and Maxim. Once, some of her photos from those days fell into my hands. I must admit, the girl was really stunning. A slender figure, lush white curls, a magnetic gaze. Men love such women. But as is often the case, a completely different reality was hidden behind the glossy cover. It turned out that despite her popularity on the internet, and Kelsey had over 100,000 subscribers, her modeling career never took off, and she already had 2 children from different men, a boy and a girl. The first pregnancy occurred when Kelsey was only 17, but the boy who was the child's father quickly disappeared from her life immediately after the birth of her daughter. In 2014, Turner made another attempt to establish her personal life. She got married and gave birth to a son. But this marriage also broke up very quickly, leaving Kelsey a single mother with 2 children in her arms and a lot of debts. And so, yesterday she was a star of the network, and today she is a destitute, homeless woman who barely makes ends meet. It was probably at this moment of despair that she met Dr. Sobercherd. Having learned about Kelsey's difficult circumstances, Thomas offered to rent an apartment for her and the children for $3,000 a month. He not only paid the deposit, but also paid for housing for a whole year and gave money for daily expenses. And all this was from his own pocket, without demanding anything in return. Of course, such a gesture can be assessed in different ways. Some will see it as a manifestation of sincere mercy, others as another proof of the doctor's strange inclinations in relations with young women. But from the point of view of the investigation, the fact itself is important. A 71-year-old respected psychiatrist suddenly decided to sponsor the life of a failed model and her 2 children. Why? And wasn't it part of some kind of intricate manipulation on Kelsey's part? As it turned out later, Kelsey was far from the only young woman patronized by 71-year-old Dr. Sobercherd. There were a good dozen of them, and they all gladly took advantage of the generosity of the elderly psychiatrist. But it seems that even among them, Kelsey stood out with her special appetites. No one else demanded such exorbitant sums from Tom. Judy, of course, knew about her husband's charitable impulses, and he himself did not hide it. However, Tom's relationship with Kelsey was becoming increasingly tense. Despite the crazy money he gave her supposedly for the maintenance of children, the girl's appetites grew incessantly. On social networks, she flaunted photos from noisy parties in the company of friends and did not even think about changing her lifestyle. Judy finally came to her senses. Kelsey was shamelessly exploiting Tom's kindness, manipulating his feelings. She begged her husband to stop sponsoring the girl, but he had already managed to throw $300,000 down the drain. Every week, Kelsey received money from him for renting a home, refueling a car, and her own whims. And all these expenses instantly turned into drinking and partying. Even a saint would lose patience here. But for some reason, Tom also needed pressure from Judy to finally come to his senses and stop paying for Kelsey's dissolute life. He warned the landlord that he would give the money only for the next 3 months, and then let the girl manage on her own. Of course, Kelsey did not like this. She suddenly lost her main breadwinner. Her fury fell not only on Tom, but also on that bitch Judy, who, oh horror, dared to open her husband's eyes. In messages, the girl promised to kill her rival and included her in the blacklist. Feeling that Tom was moving away, Kelsey resorted to outright blackmail. She threatened to call the police and say that he was a pedophile, thereby ruining his career and reputation. A person frightened by scandal is easy prey for manipulators. Tom was afraid of gossip and condemnation, but luckily Judy was there to support him in a difficult moment. I must admit that even I, a seasoned cop, got the creeps from this story. It's hard to believe that a young girl can be so insidious and merciless, and all for the sake of easy money. After Thomas stopped paying the rent for Kelsey's apartment, she was evicted in November 2018. It would seem that their relationship should have ended there, but not at all. The girl continued to terrorize the elderly doctor with threats, and in the end, he agreed to give her money for the last time just to get rid of her forever. Kelsey told Tom a sad story that social services had taken away her daughter, and now she wants to leave the city. In December 2018, she moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. At that time, Thomas decided to stop all communication with her. But Kelsey herself did not waste time. Barely arriving in Vegas, she met some Greg, and right after Christmas, they started living together. However, the relationship of this couple was, to put it mildly, turbulent. The police visited their home several times because of domestic violence, and Greg was even arrested. But Kelsey did not grieve alone for long. Already in February 2019, she found herself a new boyfriend, John Logan Kenninson, an extremely dubious personality. He had just been released from prison, where he was serving a sentence for drug distribution, and immediately occupied Kelsey's home. And then Dr. Sobercherd, who was in Vegas at a medical conference at the time, behaved extremely strangely. Despite all of Kelsey's previous threats, he met with her. Excuse me, I can't help but add, but don't all Trump supporters always want to go back to the way things used to be? A coincidence? I don't think so. It seems that the elderly man simply could not erase the girl from his life. Upon returning to California, he began to help her again, this time with money. And all because Kelsey wrote to him that her new roommate was beating her and begged for help for herself and her son. Thomas, of course, became seriously alarmed. But he decided not to tell Judy the truth. He lied that he was going to some magic show. On March 1, 2019, he flew to Las Vegas to see with his own eyes what was happening to Kelsey. It turned out that the girl lives in the house not only with her son and a sadist roommate. They also had a tenant, a certain Diana Pena, a 30-year-old waitress. She lived for free in exchange for babysitting Kelsey's son. In addition to this strange company, a not quite sewn-on guy named Jeremy also lived in the house. He occupied a room on the first floor. And so Kelsey introduces Dr. Sobercherd to all these people, supposedly her good acquaintance, almost a benefactor who is in love with her. Of course, such an explanation caused surprise and bewilderment among the roommates. But Kelsey herself vehemently denied any romantic connection. They say the man is just incredibly generous, that's why he helps. And it seemed that everything was fine. But on the very first night of Thomas's stay in the house, an unfortunate surprise happened. Jeremy's girlfriend appeared on the doorstep, blonde, drunk, and obviously not averse to flirting with a wealthy guest. And he, why sin to conceal, was partial to young beauties. Kelsey terribly disliked this. Apparently, she was afraid that a random rival would take away her sponsor. And without an influx of fresh dollars, Kelsey's usual way of life with drinking and partying was under threat. That evening, Thomas and Jeremy's girlfriend decided to go to the store. Dr. Sobercherd got behind the wheel as he did not drink alcohol. But Kelsey, consumed by jealousy, began to accuse her companion of deliberately creating discord in her relationship with Thomas. Jeremy seemed to feel the growing tension. Upon returning home, he hastily packed his things and left the house with his girlfriend, apparently so as not to aggravate the situation. Meanwhile, Thomas sent Judy a message. He explained that he came to Kelsey to clarify the situation and find out the truth. He promised to stay for the weekend and return home on March 4th. Judy was seriously worried about her husband. She knew better than anyone what Kelsey was capable of in her cruelty and manipulations. And Thomas, honest and trusting, would hardly be able to stand up for himself. She desperately begged him to return and never meet Kelsey again. After all, that girl, in Judy's opinion, was a dangerous person in an extremely unstable state. But all persuasion was in vain. Thomas did not listen to his wife. And as it turned out, that message was the last one Judy received from her beloved husband. After that, Thomas stopped communicating, and his phone was turned off altogether. Alarming premonitions did not leave Judy. She knew that her husband was suffering from early dementia, which made the situation even more dramatic. Sometimes Thomas could not find his car in the parking lot or lost things. And sometimes he even forgot the way home or did not recognize Judy's daughter. In addition, Dr. Sobercherd had a significant amount of cash with him, about $1,000, and also a diary where he wrote down everything he forgot, including passwords. Judy was afraid that her husband could be robbed or that he simply got lost in a strange city. She contacted the police 3 times, sharing her fears and suspicions. She told law enforcement officers that Thomas had gone to Kelsey and even gave them the girl's address. She noted that she had already demonstrated her cruelty more than once and was unlikely to stop using the generosity of her trusting husband. Judy was convinced that something had happened to Tom after all. He did not return when he promised. The police visited Kelsey's house several times, but to no avail. There was no one there. Only during the last visit, they noticed some strange details. The lights were on in the windows, the blinds were open, and the mailbox was completely stuffed with letters. The front door was unlocked. Going inside, the cops found no one. Only the pungent smell of cleaning products wafting through the air seemed extremely suspicious to them. Deciding not to touch potential evidence, law enforcement officers left the house. Having contacted the owner of the dwelling, the police found out little. The man only confirmed the fact that someone had paid for 3 months' rent in advance and that neither Kelsey nor Thomas were at home. Well, in light of these circumstances, the cops simply had no other choice. They obtained a search warrant for Kelsey's home, hoping to find at least some clues in this confusing story. On the morning of March 7, 2019 at 10:50 a.m., an event occurred that became a turning point in this tangled story. Some men with children were driving along a deserted road in the Nevada desert. Suddenly, they noticed a Mercedes parked in a strange place. But it was not this that caught their attention, but the broken window of the car. Without hesitation, the concerned citizens called the police. When the patrol arrived at the scene, the cops thoroughly examined the vehicle. The windows and doors were damaged as if someone had forcibly tried to get out from the inside. After starting the engine and opening the trunk, the police saw some items. But what alarmed them the most was the smell of decay emanating from there. Under the blanket lay a mutilated male body with signs of brutal violence. In my years, I've seen plenty of horrific scenes at crime scenes. But what they did to this poor soul shocked even me, a seasoned cop. The forensic experts who arrived soon began to carefully study the car. Inside, latex gloves and cleaning supplies were found. Someone was clearly trying to remove evidence. Blood traces were also found on the driver's seat, although it was not easy to establish what exactly happened there. However, the overall picture was quite obvious. It seemed that the victim was attacked right in the car, and then, barely alive or already dead, was shoved into the trunk. The examination showed that the poor man was beaten to death, having received numerous blows to the head with a blunt object. In addition, numerous bruises, cuts, and scratches were found on the body. A particularly eerie detail was the missing part of the ear. Judging by the wounds on his hands, the man had desperately tried to defend himself. But in vain, a series of powerful blows to the head left him no chance. The first thing the police found out was the name of the car owner. It turned out to be none other than Kelsey Turner. The cops immediately linked the disappearance of Dr. Sobercherd with the found mutilated body. Having obtained a warrant, the investigators visited Kelsey's home with a search. Already on the spot, they found telling evidence. A bloody towel identical to the one lying in the trunk of her Mercedes, traces of blood on broken doors, and most interestingly, cleaning supplies. It seemed as if someone had desperately tried to wipe the bloody stains off the floor. On March 15, the police finally received permission to arrest the main suspect. 2 weeks later, Kelsey Turner, who was hiding with her son in California at the time, was detained by FBI agents. The boy was sent to the care of a foster family, and the negligent mother was officially charged with murder. Her last roommate, John, was also taken into custody. It seemed that everything was clear, only the details remained. However, a real breakthrough in the investigation was the testimony of Diana, a neighbor and an involuntary participant in those terrible events. The woman herself came to the police along with her lawyer. In exchange for a mitigation of punishment, she told the investigators in detail everything that actually happened that fateful evening. I must admit, after hearing her testimony, even I, an old detective, was stunned by the ruthlessness and cold-bloodedness of the criminals. The second day of Dr. Sobercherd's visit to Kelsey in Vegas turned out to be fatal. Diana, as usual, was working at a local bar. Thomas and Kelsey came to pick her up after her shift. The doctor was driving, but he obviously had a poor sense of direction in the city and quickly got lost. Losing patience, Kelsey snatched his phone under the pretext of searching for a route. But having the device in her hands, she couldn't resist and began rummaging through Tom's messenger. And here she made an extremely unpleasant discovery. Among the messages were nude photos of her own mother, Samantha. Digging further, Kelsey found out shocking details. It turned out that her mother was also begging for money from the elderly psychiatrist. She must have touched him with some moving story from her difficult life, and the kind-hearted doctor, of course, fell for it. Upon learning about this, Kelsey went mad with rage. A barrage of insults and reproaches fell upon Thomas. The poor man was confused and did not know how to react to her frenzied attack. By some miracle, he still managed to get the car to the house without getting into an accident. But the adventures did not end there. At home, Kelsey continued to yell at Tom, calling him names. She threatened to expose his connection with her mother and ruin his reputation. To somehow hide from this verbal pressure, Thomas locked himself in her son's room. Fortunately, the boy was not at home that evening. He was staying overnight at a friend's place. However, Kelsey did not calm down. Now she was already demanding that Thomas pay a huge sum for her silence. The doctor could not stand it and slammed the door in anger. This sound infuriated John, who had been silently watching everything that was happening. Grabbing a baseball bat, he smashed the door of the room with a swing. Diana saw John rushing down the corridor like a mad beast. Then there was a dull thud, and a moment later she saw Thomas's body lying on the floor. A huge bruise was already swelling on his head. Puzzled by their own deed, John and Kelsey instantly fled, leaving the unconscious doctor to his fate. Diana rushed to help the poor man. She gave him water, tried to somehow bring him to his senses. Thomas barely realized what had happened. He was in deep shock. Diana understood that the man needed immediate medical attention. She wanted to take him to the hospital, but unfortunately, she did not know how to drive a car. Thomas was also unable to get behind the wheel. We had to wait for Kelsey and John. There was simply no one else to count on. But the couple was in no hurry to rescue their victim. On the contrary, the exhausted Thomas whispered a terrible thing to Diana. Most likely, these two were planning to kill him. A moment later, Kelsey returned. Cynically stating that she would take Tom to the hospital, she began hastily wiping away all traces of the attack. The frightened Diana rushed to wash the bloodied floor. At the same time, she heard Thomas desperately arguing with his tormentors in the garage. And then, through the noise, Kelsey's cold order to John reached her. "Hit him again." The girl rushed downstairs to stop the beast of a roommate. But alas, she did not make it in time. An innocent person was being brutally finished off right before her eyes, and no one was going to save the victim. Diana was in complete shock from what she saw. She froze in place, not knowing what to do next. Tears streamed down her face, but Kelsey did not give the girl even a minute to despair. Coldly ordering the subordinate to go back upstairs and erase the last traces of the crime, she herself began to carry the bloodied body out of the house. Meanwhile, the police, called by one of the neighbors, were already banging on the door. Diana had every chance to stop this madness. It was enough just to open the door and tell the cops the truth. But the girl did not dare. She panicked and barricaded herself inside, hoping to wait out the danger. The next day, Kelsey took Thomas's mutilated body to the desert and left it in the trunk of his own car. Perhaps she hoped that in such a deserted place, exposure could be avoided, but she miscalculated. On March 21, Kelsey and her roommate John were finally arrested on suspicion of murder. The obstinate couple denied their involvement to the last, blaming each other. And here Diana's testimony played a key role. Thanks to a plea deal with the investigation, the girl was released on bail. Already in court, she fearlessly pointed to Kelsey and John as the direct killers of Thomas. The defenders of the defendants, of course, tried to tarnish the witness and downplay the significance of her testimony, but in vain. During the hearings, Kelsey always appeared in loose prison clothes, and no wonder she was in the last months of pregnancy with another, already third child. Who was the father of this baby remained a mystery. In the end, John surrendered first. He confessed to second-degree murder, admitting his part in the conspiracy. The court sentenced him to 45 years behind bars. Kelsey held out to the last, pretending to be an innocent victim of circumstances. Her own trial was scheduled for November 2022, but a moment before the start of the hearing, the woman suddenly changed her testimony. She also admitted guilt in second-degree murder. The sentence is 25 years in prison. Already in the cell, Kelsey gave birth to a daughter who was instantly transferred to the guardianship authorities. It seems that the child was lucky she will not see her insidious mother until she becomes an adult, and let that one rot behind bars. The investigation established that Kelsey was a clever swindler and a pathological liar. She cynically used a kind-hearted Thomas for money, and when she realized that the elderly doctor would no longer be her source of income, she decided to get rid of him. Kelsey's accusations of pedophilia against Dr. Sobercherd turned out to be completely unfounded. The police thoroughly examined the contents of his phone and other electronic devices, but did not find any evidence to support these horrific allegations. Yes, there were photos of naked women in his mobile phone's memory, but there were no images of children or minors among them. The investigators also unearthed the fact of intimate correspondence between Thomas and Kelsey with quite explicit photos. But since both were adults, these materials were considered inappropriate to be presented in court as evidence of the doctor's guilt. It is difficult to unequivocally assess the actions of Dr. Sobercherd. On the one hand, his relationships with young women and obsession with charity seem strange, to say the least, especially for a respectable man well over 70. But despite everything, Thomas was a kind, sensitive person who sincerely sought to help those in need, and his professional merits and good reputation are undeniable. Until the very end, his wife Judy tried to protect the trusting Thomas from Kelsey's insidious encroachments. She repeatedly begged her husband to sever all ties with this girl. She felt that she was manipulating and using the elderly doctor for her own selfish purposes. Unfortunately, the man in love completely lost his mind and did not listen to her wise advice. And now I would like to draw your attention to another tragic aspect of this eerie story. To the fate of Kelsey's unfortunate children, a boy and two girls, whom she gave birth to from different men. Babies who were unlucky enough to be born to this irresponsible and cynical woman. She always put her own desires and whims above the needs and well-being of her offspring. Thanks to Diana's testimony, it became known that Kelsey used children as a lever of influence on others. She asked for money allegedly for their maintenance, but she spent it on entertainment and drugs. She led a dissolute life, dragging the kids through dubious rented apartments and dens. Are these normal conditions for the growth and development of children? It's strange that social services did not take them away earlier. I'm afraid to imagine what trauma such upbringing will turn into for these kids. After all, they never had a chance to experience maternal warmth and genuine care. Their short life is continuous poverty, instability, and arbitrariness of an insidious mother. And the worst thing is that Kelsey's care was cut short in the most insidious way through the brutal murder of a person. Not the best example to follow. You know, such high-profile cases always make you wonder what is going on in the heads of such Kelseys. What pushes these young women to embark on a bloody path and drag the innocent with them? One thing I can say for sure, at the heart of their actions lies vile selfishness and the inability to take responsibility for their lives. They are not ready to be mothers, but they give birth to children. They do not want to work, but they strive for luxury and wealth. They manipulate, lie, and parasitize on the kindness of others. And when the victim shows character, they get rid of them at any cost. Thinking about Kelsey Turner, I can't get rid of the feeling of bitterness and disappointment. This woman is a prime example of what a mother should not be. She completely forgot about her most important duty to take care of the well-being and safety of her own children. Instead of creating a stable and loving environment for them, Kelsey turned the lives of her offspring into complete chaos. She dragged them through various boyfriends and dubious dwellings, while she herself was drinking and using drugs at this time. The kids lived in an atmosphere of constant fear, neglect, and deprivation. But even this did not prompt the negligent mother to come to her senses and change her behavior. She continued to make irresponsible decisions, obeying only her own impulsive desires. And she used the children as a lever for pressure and manipulation of others, including Dr. Sobercherd. Tragically, in the end, even Judy could not protect the poor kids from the devastating influence of their mother. Social services also lacked the determination to take them out of the toxic environment. One can only imagine what traumas and complexes such upbringing inflicted on them for life. In this bloody drama, Dr. Sobercherd found himself a hostage to his own good intentions. Despite some controversial traits of his personality, he was a kind and sensitive person who sincerely sought to help those in need. He did not deserve such a cruel and untimely death at the hands of an insidious fraudster whom he unreservedly trusted. This case has become a chilling confirmation of the old truth. Sometimes excessive kindness, generosity, and trust turn against the benefactor himself. Not everyone who reaches out for help is guided by pure thoughts. Some, like Kelsey, only need money and the opportunity to parasitize on other people's resources. Of course, it's easy to judge the victim from the height of lived years and one's own experience, like it was necessary to think with your head, not your heart. Do not succumb to the manipulation and threats of a scammer. But Thomas, it seems, simply could not do otherwise. His humanity, sincerity, and compassion for the disadvantaged became both his greatest virtue and his fatal mistake. Now we can only hope that Kelsey's orphan children will find comfort in a new loving family, that some kind people will take them under their wing and give them the peace, comfort, and care that these babies have been deprived of since birth. Perhaps this will somewhat compensate them for the traumatic past and help them grow into worthy individuals. As for Dr. Sobercherd, he will undoubtedly remain forever in the memory of those he managed to help during his lifetime. His bright soul, selflessness, and desire to give good will definitely not be forgotten. And although these amazing qualities eventually ruined Thomas, they also turned him into a real guardian angel for many unfortunate and disadvantaged people. They say that true kindness does not need gratitude or recognition. It does not expect anything in return, but simply does the right thing at the call of the heart. Probably this is exactly what our deceased doctor was, a generous soul in a soulless world of human cruelty and self-interest. And although his earthly path ended too early and tragically, I want to believe that there, in the afterlife, Thomas finally found the peace and love that he sometimes lacked during his lifetime. And we, the cops, will just do our job. We will punish the guilty so that the death of this bright man is not in vain. It's hard to put an end to such high-profile cases, because despite the arrests and trials, some bitter injustice remains, as if evil once again prevailed, and we again could not prevent a bloody denouement. But despite everything, I believe that every good deed, every rescue, and every punished abomination makes this world at least a little better and safer. And even if we are not given to eradicate all the evil, at least we do not allow it to prevail completely. The story of Dr. Sobercherd will become another sad, but important brick in the wall of human memory. A warning for some and an inspiration for others. A reminder that evil is always near, but good does not disappear either. The main thing is not to lose humanity and compassion, even in the face of the most terrible trials. And the most important thing is that even in this gloomy world, from time to time, such special people as Thomas are born, who simply do not know how to do otherwise only to give good and love to everyone around. And it's a pity that it is they who usually pay for it with their own lives. But maybe it is their example that will someday teach us all true wisdom and humanity. At least I really hope so.